This is cinematic. It should look nicely blurred out there and back here. Does it look pretty good? This is also new product nerd files. If you haven't been under a rock since February 5th when they announced it, you're aware that Fischer has a new cosmetic coming out, a new product line launch, new names, new all sorts of stuff. Anytime this happens, we have to ask ourselves, what's new? What's actually different? And in this case, most of the product line is what we've become accustomed to and love. There's one exception, and a very exciting one at that. They do have a brand new 702 cold classic ski coming, and the venerable 812 camber that has been around since early 2000s, late 90s, a long time, has been put out to pasture, at least in racing. The truth is, 802 hasn't been used, 802 being the Speedmax construction of the 812 camber. 802 hasn't been used in racing at a high level with very much frequency or consistency for quite a long time. The 902 has really taken over there. And the main difference is that the 902 has open tips and tails, and the 802 has closed tips and tails. And of course, they modify the pocket shape for the conditions. So what is this new 702? Anytime there's a new ski, we have to ask ourselves questions starting from the inside out. Are we talking about any new materials? In this case, no. The materials are the same. So in this case are the thickness profiles of the skis. For each length, the ski has the same thickness profile as the 802 and the 902 skis have had for quite a while since they introduced the Speedmax construction. Fischer has really nailed the sweet spot in terms of building a pretty consistent pocket length at a pretty consistent material profile that gives a really nice balance of accessibility, elasticity, and carrying capacity that they can steer with minor changes to the camber. In this case, with this brand new 702 ski, is in fact a camber adjustment. It's a new camber concept, and it lives a little bit in between the 812 and the 902 that we've all come to love. We've had this 702 since the start of the season. I picked it up when I was traveling in Europe in November. I stopped by the race department really quick to say hi to those guys. They had just produced the first general production series of this new 702 camber. The ski has been on the World Cup already for at least a season. So this is actually the first, when I say production, it means it's not made specifically by the development department as a special product for racing only. This is the first production line construction of the ski, and I wanted to take those because it's the most representative of what we'll be working with for the coming season. When we start talking about the differences in camber, we typically sense them to be very large in our hands and eyes when we're evaluating the skis in person. But as we start actually measuring differences, like I did here, trying to trace these skis, 3 skis on one piece of paper, they're much more similar than different. I think this is the tip over here. All of this just goes to underscore that it's small changes to camber make a really big difference to the performance of the skis, and we develop a really pretty good sensitivity to that. As we examine the cambers and the way they actually play out, the first thing we can discuss is just the resting camber. This is something we actually assess and measure when we're selecting skis. The 802 has a considerably higher resting camber. Sometimes we test with fingers. It's a solid 2-finger ski, this 197, whereas this is pretty tight. The point is that when we're selecting 812 camber skis in particular, we tend to look for lower resting cambers for the simple reason that with a high resting camber and a pretty standard bridge camber, you have to put a lot of energy into deforming the material outside the pocket to get the pocket down. The more deformation is held in the material outside the pocket, the more load gets carried outside the pocket, and the more rebound and spring response you get from that material. And so what we see is that it can be really easy to get kick when you're really vertically loading from the ball of the foot. But as you start to move past the platform, as you start to move past your kicking position, the angles change and you start pushing back more than you're pushing down. And when that happens, the vertical component of the force vector decreases. And with a really high camber ski, this stores too much energy outside the pocket, that can start to compete with your grip force. And in bad cases, you can sort of get ejected from the kick at the tail end of the motion. You seldom feel this when you're warming up for a race, but it's really kind of catastrophic when you're super tired and you're milking the kick up those long final hills, and you got lactate coming out your ears, and you just really, really want to get to the finish line, and you're losing the tail end of your kicks. That's a bad feeling. Typically, 902 has always put more of the strength of the ski into the pocket, which makes the pocket feel more predictable, and you compete a little less with the material outside the pocket. This particular 802, I like it quite a lot, and Fischer's done some really good work in recent years, but all along we have been looking for the lower camber 802 skis in order to get the skis that put more of the strength into the pocket to provide a more predictable and stable kicking platform through a broad range of conditions and skiing styles. So if we compare these skis, we're looking here at 802, 702, the new ski, and the 902, just a standard, quite soft 902. We can compare them sort of front to back. As I mentioned, 902 has that rolling opening tip and tail profile, and therefore also shorter contact areas in the tip and tail. This 802, the front contact area starts here and goes right back to the pocket. The 702 starts here, and the 902 is almost identical. So in terms of contact length, we're looking at quite comparable 802 and 902. This is a little bit of a moving target in 902. These are both on the long end of what I would consider to be normal for contact areas. We picked this 902 as a universal ski and intended to use it for hard wax, so we weren't looking for something too extreme with the selection of this 902. But it's just worth noting that the shape of the camber in the forebody is quite comparable here between these skis. There is a little difference in the release angle. As the tip pops open and comes back, the 702 stays pretty low, and the 902 might just open just a little more. This is something they control, but it's also a variable that we would look for within a production series even. And so it's not something that I feel like will be so different. There might be quite a lot of overlap between 702 and 902 in terms of the tip profile and the amount of splay or the angle out front. That's distinctly different from the 802, which has much longer forebody pressure. Now, this begs a question. If these were skate skis, we would absolutely be saying, oh, this one's a cold ski and this is a warm ski because it's got shorter contact. There are going to be a lot of people who are upset with the way this is going down because they want to see that really long contact zone for a hard wax ski. I'm just not convinced. We've been using 902s for hard wax predominantly, even in very cold conditions, for a really long time. Classic skiing is done in tracks. The tracks see a lot of traffic, and the skis don't need to leave the snow in motion. So they're not constrained by the same snow touch and release feeling that skate skis are, where it's really important to have that climbing feel and that light touch. Classic skis are go, and when they come off the snow, they're always kind of stopped. I think there's a lot of room for these shorter contact zones in cold classic skis, and what we have looked for a long time are low angles. We don't want to see any sharp, hard angles. Especially true as we move back along the ski here and look at the kick zone. If we look at the angle of the front of the pocket here, it's defined by this graduation of marks. What I've done here is just close the kick zone down to 1 millimeter between the two skis at the high point, and then measure using feeler gauges. And you can see the graduation of the same gauges between the 802 and 702 is comparably long here, whereas the 902 is considerably shorter. This reflects the fact that the 902 pocket has a shorter radius and flexion at the front of the camber, which means that the pocket holds right out to that point and it reaches a higher volume much sooner. And this is to accommodate heavier wax jobs and the overall shape that has made the 902 so successful. So when we look at the leading edge of the pocket, and in fact the pocket shape as a whole, the 702 and the 802 have very, very similar camber characteristics, load response, and everything else. As we move toward the tail of the ski, up here we've got our 802 ski again. Our contact points are once again here all the way back to here. So we've got very long surface area contact in the rear of the ski. I'll talk about the rest of these marks in a moment. On the 702, we're running here to here, Likewise, the 902 there to there. There is more differentiation, I would say, in the tail camber between 702 and 902. You can see that this ski rests pretty close together at the rear contact point. The 702 is a little more open, 802 is considerably more open. So this is more graduated. Even though these contact lengths are very similar, I would say that the camber shape has more roll in the 902. It does, however, and this is critical, have some of this rolling opening camber in the 702. And this, I think, is super important. In my opinion, a little camber reversal in the tail of skis is kind of like magic. And this is, by camber reversal, what I mean is we have the overall arch of the ski, and then in the tail, the camber actually reverses and turns back the other way, allowing the tail to splay open a little bit. This is the thing. This is the crux of it here. With the 812, which has positive camber, although it's quite flat through here, but all the way back through most of the tail section, as we load the ski, we progressively deform that camber. So this is bent in this direction, and under load, it's also under stress. It doesn't release that stress. It's deformed from its natural resting state continually as we load into the pocket. And that's what builds tension and stores energy back in this material. It's kind of a cost of having a really long contact area in the back, and having that tension back there is part of what makes the ski feel, to me, a little like a trampoline, where you put energy in and you got to keep loading all the way to the bottom to get into the pocket. The 702 has what the 902 has had all along, which is a more progressive rolling camber. Because that camber reverses a little bit, it releases as it goes. So I don't know if this shot is going to show it well enough, but what we're looking at is that as the contact point moves forward, it releases back here, and that hot spot, if you will, the contact zone, moves like this. And the material, because it's like a rocker, never rests on the snow under stress. It's not deformed when it's on the snow. Can you see it release in the back? Now that's a very long, low angle, and there's real subtleness in the shape of the ski back here. And this is where I think the biggest difference and the most magic lie in this ski. One of the things I've always really liked about the 902 ski is that it's very position activated. So as you roll forward on your foot, you suddenly arrive in the pocket, and it feels digital. You just, all your load gets delivered right to where you want it, and it's super effective. With the 802, I don't feel that way. You kind of have to push into the ski. With the 702, you have more that 902 digital feeling where you just arrive in the pocket. Skis like this have existed on purpose or by mistake over time. I picked a pair years ago when they were first coming with the Speedmax skis, 802 construction ski with a low resting camber and a rolling rear end. Pat O'Brien won the Craftsbury Marathon on that ski. Do you still have that ski, Pat? You must have it. I don't know. It's not here. I checked because I was going to show. That was a really good one. And since then, I've always felt like, hey, if we could bring the resting camber on this cold ski down into the 20 millimeter range for a 207, I'm going to be so much happier. And that's what the 702 is delivering, is a ski that sits down a little more easily, is a little more predictable, puts the strength in the pocket where you need it, gives you more adjustability of your kick wax on the day. And I believe it's also just going to be straight fast. We put Isabel Caldwell on this pair of skis for the Craftsbury Marathon, and it's too soft for her. We were able to make it work by clicking the bindings back. I'll have to ask Amy. Might have been 2 clicks for Izzy, and she had quite a good marathon on these skis.
Go faster, you're losing.
The nice thing about having that rolling camber is it enhances the position reactivity, if you will, and an adjustment to the binding position really does adjust your access to the kick trigger. That's less true on the 812. You're going to find more adjustability of the ski and more ability to change the feel by changing the position. In my opinion, you're never going to go forward of the neutral position based on what I've seen, but you might find utility at -1 with a little more open speed if you tend to ski through the front of your foot on a correctly sized ski. Or if you're like Isabel, making do with a ski that's a little too soft, then yeah, maybe even -2. This is a super exciting ski for me. This is incremental. Fischer has had great stability in their classic ski production. I think what they're making right now is the best I've seen from them, which makes it the best I've seen from anyone in the industry. I think this is just another step forward from a company that has classic skis really wired right now.